Salutations, my friends, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Factions of Freedom. I'm your host, Noisera, Freedom Faction, whichever one you prefer, and I've titled this episode The Paranormal Perspective, Volume 2. If you haven't noticed, there's a lot of crazy things going on in the world, and I felt like we should talk about different things. I've actually done a breakdown on the things that are going on in Syria, as well as the heightened tensions that we are seeing take place in North Korea. And I would definitely advise you guys to go check that out. I made it public on our exclusive feed, so you guys could actually go back and look on it. But if you are an exclusive member, you already are caught up to what we're talking about. And so what we're doing here with the Paranormal Perspective is basically going out with people's stories, people's comments, people's tales of something strange that has happened to them and that they've allowed to share with us. And let me tell you, whenever we decided to start this, I definitely didn't think I would get as many responses as I have been getting. And I definitely have been getting a lot of responses, guys. A lot of responses. I have a really good episode planned for you guys. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Really. For what I really have planned for you guys, I really think this is going to be one of those episodes, where it's great, because I feel like I'm able to connect with you guys. And as I've talked about frequently on the show all the time, paranormal investigations are a passion of mine. And I'm actually going to be sharing with you guys one of the cases that I'm going over locally, and one of the testimonies that I recently acquired, and I felt like this was emblematic because this was somebody else that comes there frequently, and it'll be great. I'll set it up for you, and we'll play into it. Reason being, while we're doing this, the Paranormal Perspective in this episode is because I was recently featured on Lori Alexander's show, 3 Minutes to Midnight, the show that we also go over and co-host on occasionally. We'll start doing broadcasts there as well, but I was on their show basically talking about paranormal activity that has taken place through the veil and what that means. And we'll be going over that and so much more in this actual episode. So with that being said, you know what? Few updates, and then sorry to do that. I'm still working on the deliveries for these types of things. But a few updates. Make sure you guys are checking out Paradox Radio. As I said, this is where you can catch, if anything, the minicast that we did earlier this week with the Syrian conflict, as well as the escalation that is taking place in North Korea, and other things as well, the false flags that are taking place. Because this is still information that I feel like people need to pay attention to, and it's still relevant. So we'll put it out there for you guys on Paradox Radio, so make sure you're paying attention to that. And also make sure you're becoming a part of Patreon exclusive, because regardless, you'll still have access to these minicasts on your feed. You'll have access to the archive seasons as well, early access to the episodes, the music that I'm starting to put in there as well. And now, because we're always trying to diversify the content, diversifies what you guys have access to, you can leave us voicemails as well as emails. And the number, if you guys want to pause right quick and send us a voicemail, is 843-900-6296. As I said before, we're always trying to diversify the information, and because you guys deserve it. Another thing to look out for is the Series 1 line. This is something I'll be debuting, and this is something I'll be subtly trying to show you guys throughout the rest of the month into May. So look out for that. If you are a video watcher, look out for that. If you're on the Instagram, look out for that. If you're just listening, look out for that, because we are going to be starting to do some pretty cool things over here, and I'm really excited. But I'm ranting, and this has been a super long intro, so let's get started with the show. So as I said before, a lot of what we're going to be going over really is you guys. This is a listener-based episode. If anything, I'm trying to keep engaged with you guys, talk about these types of things, and understand really what's going on. I obviously have like a few articles and a few things that I would like to cover that we can talk about throughout the show. But ultimately, I think the best thing to do is to give back, to let these types of things explain themselves, and without sounding so strange, strange and repetitive, you know, we're just gonna kind of let these things, as I said before, speak for themselves. So with the stories that I have lined up for you guys, you know, it really does range from encountering entities to having premonitions to seeing multiple UFOs, engaging UFOs. Like, it is wild, the types of things that we start hearing and seeing whenever we ask this question. And if you have yourself questions, please feel free to email us or voicemail or send us voicemails, because we're always accepting your stories. I definitely appreciate whenever people send their stories to us. That's one thing I try to stress all the time when talking to people, is that I know this is uncomfortable, but I feel like by confronting it, we're able to have a certain power of our own, you see. So with that being said, let's start talking about some of these super cool stories. And this is from Beth H. Himian. She says that I've had many things happen to me, but I'll share one of the major ones with you. I'd like to start off by saying that I used to love watching Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures. But once I stopped watching these TV shows altogether, these incidents stopped. The first major experience, I was woken up around 5 a.m. by my foot gently being rubbed. I thought at first, you know, maybe it was my boyfriend saying goodbye for the day. You know, I remember him telling me that he had to leave early for school. When I opened my eyes, there was a black, smoky figure standing at the side of my bed. I could see a silhouette out of a head and shoulders, but then it was just like a black cloud for the rest of the body. As soon as I looked at it, it froze, or I froze, but I didn't show any fear. It immediately stopped touching my foot, and after a few seconds, it began to slowly, very slowly start walking away. But here's the kicker. It went into my closet. With its smoky arm still extended at me the whole way. I know I wasn't having a dream. I woke up my boyfriend, who, ironically enough, was sleeping next to me and couldn't believe what just happened. I felt like because I showed no fear, I had to leave. And that's what we hear a lot of whenever we actually start talking about these types of things, is how people somehow are able to muster up a strength, muster up a power within them that gives them the ability to combat these types of things, to confront these types of entities, or whatever energy this is. You see, whenever we're talking about these things, ultimately what we're trying to do is get a perception of how these things are, of how we are engaging them, or at least how they're trying to engage us. One of the reasons why I want to do Paranormal Perspective is because you know how we constantly hear that CERN is opening up portals and dimensions, looking into different dimensions. Well, I believe that there's got to be some kind of energetic exchange between these types of dimensions. If they're trying to break the veil, something has to work its way here. And for the people that are listening, we have the witches that are binding Trump, the video of these witches that have been basically conducting organized rituals since Trump's inauguration. While we also have many young adults are turning to witchcraft as a way to rebel against their conservative Christian upbringings. And this is true. I also believe that because we have people who are conducting rituals, seances, workings, even invocations to some degree, because they're doing these types of things, they are allowing for these forces to take hold. You see, for these forces to have a more energy, more intuition, more attention, so to speak. And this is something that I'll be referring back to more and more so throughout the show as well. You know, the witches that are binding Trump and this type of energy, and giving presence, giving power to this type of force. And then the next story that we actually have sent in to us is by Gabe6. He says, me and a girl I used to see, and this is what's funny, when putting these types of stories together, I saw the commonality of how it was somebody else basically describing the opposite experience of what was already going on. And what I'm trying to say is, in the first story, we heard how something was, how it was a girlfriend and a boyfriend. The girlfriend was awake, the boyfriend was asleep. Now it's the boyfriend that's awake and the girlfriend's asleep. But you know, that's just strange kind of commonalities. But the story goes like this: me and a girl I used to see both saw a luminescent vapor or smoke materialize out of nowhere in my doorway. He just saw some kind of smoke just come out of nowhere in his doorway. It was the middle of the night, and I remember waking up to her freaking out, asking me what that is, and we both were just locked in a state of shock for what felt like 5 minutes. Just staring at it. It was probably really only 6 to 7 seconds, and it started out small and got bigger and brighter the longer we stared at it. And then, just as quickly as it materialized, it evaporated. All the doors in the house were locked. Not a single light was on in the whole house. All the blinds were closed, and we were home alone. Sober. You just had to add that in there. My friend was so freaked out by all of this, that she refused to get out of the bed until late the next day. And is absolutely convinced that it was a spirit visiting us. I still, to this day, have no real explanation for it. It was one of the oddest experiences of my life. Odd. I would have to say so. I mean, if you're literally having entities materialize in your face or in your hallway. There's another story that I have picked out for you guys later on too, that basically follows along this trend where something just materializes out of nowhere, or its presence is felt prior to it actually even revealing itself, and then once it does, it's inside of the mind of the person that it's trying to do, i.e. another one of these situations where we see it trying to feed off of fear. And a lot of what these things are, you know, and that's why I wanted to put those two stories back to back. The fact that this was a couple, two people basically interacting with these types of things, because this is another commonality as well. That there's multiple people encountering these types of entities, or this energy, whatever this force is. You see, whatever's bleeding through, whatever's trying to prey on us, so to speak. But here's another story for you, and this is from One Conscious Mind. It says, after visiting my new boyfriend's place, we were alone in his room, and the master bedroom door slammed shut. At first we thought it was the window, so we slowly opened the door, and it was locked shut. No other windows were open. We didn't have any pets, and there was nothing behind the door. We left right away. And after that incident, his dad got really weird and violent and punched him, giving him a black eye. And what's weird is his dad, who was normally a nice person, did this. So this was completely out of character. Later, after we broke up, he told me that he would have demonic nightmares. And about a year and a half after, his family moved out. And even more strange is that the house is brand new. I was actually there when the family had the house blessing. Since he's moved, nothing has happened in his new apartment. So what does that mean? Whenever there's actual locations that are having interactions, experiences. I know this seems like a very simple story, but what are the connotations behind it? What could that mean? Demonic nightmares are definitely one thing that I feel like is very strange. People being plagued by dreams. And if anything, one of these side projects that I have in the works for you guys, if anything, is to have on someone who's not necessarily being plagued by demonic dreams, but who is trying to write down his premonitions, his visions, these dreams that he has throughout the day or throughout the month. He sent me a memo of all of them, and I I didn't want to fit them into this because there's no way that I could. This is an entire episode entirely. We might break it up into parts. We might have them on the show and talk about these types of things and much more. But basically, what I'm trying to say is this is evidence of something interacting or people being tapped into this type of field, so to speak. Whatever this noosphere, this consciousness is, whatever this collective is. You see. And so I think, whenever we're looking at all these types of things, understanding, as I said before, because in this show, we definitely like to we like to go pretty far out there, and I would like to say thank you to all of the people in all the countries that are listening. We're now finding out that there are people are in Sri Lanka, as well as Hungary, and I think Uruguay. As well, we have people that are listening from all over the world. We have new listeners that are coming every day, and I would like to say thank you guys for tuning in. Basically being caught up, we like to talk about a lot of different things on the show, and we definitely go pretty far out there, but it is because, not to steal Ron Johnson's name, but truth is stranger than fiction. Things are very weird. There's no way that you can make up a lot of these types of things. And we like to talk about a lot of the fringe topics. So what I'm trying to say is, not only do we discuss, these types of strange things that we have to realize are going on in our reality, but we also like to try to tie it into the news. You see, so if we're over here talking about how there are people that are being plagued by demonic nightmares and houses, having strange, violent episodes, things that shouldn't necessarily normally happen, that do take place, what does it mean whenever a man is granted divorce after his wife is possessed by the devil? I know that sounds strange, but an Italian man has been granted a divorce after claiming that his wife was possessed by the devil. I put this up, and it's from the Drudge Report feed, April 10th, and it says that the woman has exhibited inexplicable behavior since 2007, including fits, stifling, and other unusual phenomena. A Milan court heard her husband, who attributed the episodes to a, quote, demonic possession, her sister, as well as a priest and a Capuchin monk, confirmed that the strange behavior, testifying that the woman, a devout Catholic, had at one point knocked over a church pew, hurling it towards the altar using just one hand. Witnesses even claimed to have seen her levitate. Before falling to the ground, the Milan Court Tribunal acknowledged that the woman was clearly agitated and said that she did not act knowingly, alluding to the fact that she was possessed. She was doing very, very strange things. There's no way that her behavior could be explained. They had a priest, a monk, her sister, and all kinds of people that were able to see the strange things that were going on, and as well as her being able to levitate. But the article goes on to say that before falling to the ground, the Milan Court Tribunal acknowledged that the woman was clearly agitated, and she did not act accordingly. According to Il Corriere del Sera today, I'm sorry if I butchered that, the judge ruled that the incidents could be attributed to an illness that gives you super strength. I don't think so. Since the woman was judged healthy following by the doctors and psychiatrists, several exorcists had also attempted to cure her over the years, but to no avail. So this was not the first time this lady had exhibited these types of things, these types of traits, these types of characteristics. So now this husband, after years of having a wife that succumbs to demonic possession, he has finally been able to be granted his divorce. But what does that say? If they can say that several exorcists also attempted to cure her over the years, but to no avail, that it didn't happen. The couple, who have had 2 children, were eventually granted a no-fault divorce. Italy had no provision for divorce until the 1970s, and the difficulties caused by this were subject to a celebrated 1961 film, Divorce, Italian Style. The comedy features Marcello Mastroianni as a Sicilian noble who cooks up a plot to kill his wife in a crime of passion so he can be free to marry a younger model. However, legislation which came into force last year made it easier and quicker to end marriages, prompting a 57% surge in the divorce rate. Wow. Now, only 1 year after the official separation is necessary before couples can begin divorce proceedings, or 6 months in the case of a separation by mutual consent. Previously, couples had to be officially separated for 3 years. That all sounds like a handful. But what I'm trying to say is that when we talk about these types of things, also that the UFOs and aliens files have been declassified in the U.S. Forest Service reports, things like this that we'll get into as well, other people's encounters with UFOs, Bigfoot, and all these other strange creatures, things of that nature. But what I'm trying to say is that when we look at things in this paranormal perspective, through this scope, through this lens, we have to understand that these things are still taking place, that there are still strange occurrences, weird encounters, and a litany of things that are going on, a litany of things that we try to get into the show. But we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll start talking about, again, some more of your guys' awesome stories. So sit tight. I'll check out you guys real soon. And we are back talking about you guys, talking about your awesome stories, talking about what's going on in this strange world that we're living in. I feel like whenever we take these breaks, it gives me like a second to, readjust. We always come into the show very hot as to tell you guys, all the strange things that are going on in a week. You'd be surprised the types of things that go on. Got to keep you guys updated, keep you on your toes, talk about these types of things. But as I said before, we're going to get back to your guys' awesome stories. And this comes from Mama Theorist. And this says that this happened in 1998 when my husband and I had just started dating. I was at an apartment one night. I don't recall the movie that we were watching, but there was a scene where the actress threw coins in the toilet, wishing for her old self back or something like that. I don't know. And the only reason why I remember that part is because my husband had a handful of coins that were minding their own business, mind you, sitting on top of a mantle. And the moment that the actress threw the coins into the toilet, those coins on the mantle fell at the same time. We simultaneously jumped off the couch, wide-eyed and everything, all the while my husband yelling, "What the F was that?" It still gives me the heebie-jeebies. Till this day, me and my husband talk about it, and we still don't have an explanation of how that could possibly have happened. 1998. Experiences that go all the way back then. You see, we're talking about divorces that are taking place because wives are showing strange examples of super strength or showing all kinds of other things going on. Literally not being able to be cured by several priests, several exorcists, and not even being recognized by her sister, while we're also hearing that simultaneous events. And if you ask me, things like this, whenever there's synchronistic events that could take place in a person's life, basically, whenever we see what could be considered energetic synchronization, and this is something I'll try to get into later on with the video that I want to play for you guys, where we talk about basically one of the cases that I'm involved in, where prior to actually discussing, as I said before, the testimony that I have ready for you guys, discussing these types of things, prior to actually getting that testimony, and after getting the testimony, more of the electrical interference was there. But basically what we're talking about ultimately is how there is this synchronization of whatever energy that is. You see, because I feel like whenever people see these types of things, they try to, I don't want to say mimic them, but there's examples where that happens. This could have been one of those. But the other story that we have comes from a JSL Martinez, and it says, when I was going to elementary school, I was living with my grandmother, who regularly practiced witchcraft. I didn't understand it at the time, but I would experience paranormal activity basically every day. From seeing a huge figure in a black coat wearing a hat float through the hall, to hearing deep voices in the middle of the day that I can only assume were repeating a phrase in reverse. It was only until a couple of years ago that I really was able to comprehend the whole situation. I'm 24 now, but at 17, I promised myself I would never live back there again. Unfortunately, my parents were divorced. Could you imagine literally living with someone that would be practicing witchcraft, someone that would be this open about it, someone that would literally think it's okay to conduct these types of magical rituals, these seances, saying these types of things? As wild as that might sound, I'd like to say, well, what do we have going on with the witches that are binding Trump?
A separate group of protesters hoping to impeach the president with a curse. Today, a dozen so-called witches gathered in Balboa Park to protest President Trump. They signed pink slips and put a, quote, curse on the president. The event, called Fire the Foul, was hosted by the group Ground Zero Players. People at the event say they are horrified by the president's actions.
It's incredible that anybody could be so stupid as to do so many things that are hurtful to the American people.
Well, many Trump supporters argue the president is creating jobs and making the country safe. Meantime, questions.
Well, we're not here to talk smack about Donald Trump, but to illustrate the fact that indeed people are still practicing witchcraft. And then not only that, not only are they practicing it privately, but they're also practicing it publicly. So whenever we have people that are growing up with curanderas, with brujas, with people that are practicing this type of witchcraft, or practicing whatever type of magical discipline they have, you see, this is what we're doing. We're moving more and more so into this occult world, into this paranormal perspective, into this thing where we have to realize that either magic exists, more of these spirits are coming through, or we're living in a world to where more people are losing their mind. And I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that simply because I know that more people are experiencing strange things. I'm experiencing even stranger things these days than I thought before, doing all these types of things. And so truth is truly stranger than fiction, my friends. But let us get back into these stories. This is from Mr. Malcolm J. It says that I have had visions that come to me in the middle of the night. I saw in one, I saw two unclean spirits, as the Tanakh, which is the Hebrew Bible, refers to them. They were both dressed as homeless people, wearing tethered gray rags, and the line around the iris of the eyes was a squiggly, sort of defined line. If the eyes are indeed the window to the soul, theirs was either gone or they had never had one. They were just standing there, holding hands. And in another vision, I saw the Lord himself in space, along with some other stuff. And since I've had these visions, I've always known that what we refer to as the paranormal, or the supernatural, is literally all around us. I would definitely have to agree. We just can't access it without special training because they involve different dimensions. The things of quantum physics, really. Thank you, Mr. Malcolm. I would definitely agree. Because when we talk about these types of things, we're literally talking about an entirely different existence, an entirely different ethosphere. You know, we're talking about the ether. We're talking about something that we're talking about the occult. We're talking about the esoteric. We're talking about the paranormal, which is really the supernormal. You know, this is the real reality. Are these ancestor spirits that have been here? Are these just entities that haven't been cleansed? Is there work that still has to be done here? Why are we talking about these types of things? Because more of them are going on. Even in Chile, the national police was spooked by a seemingly haunted house. We talked about that in one of our previous editions. How they literally had to call the national police there. Things were being thrown around. Near poltergeist, near level stuff. You see. And these things are happening more so than you would think, guys. Trust me. Trust me. Let's talk about another one, and this comes from a Mr. John Mixer Marshall. He says, I have experienced Bigfoot and seen ghosts, and even encountered some black-eyed red demons. The reason why I wanted to mention this here for you guys, I myself have had, I don't want to say encounters singular, just that an encounter at a very young age with, I think, probably one of these black red-eyed demons. And I don't want to say it traumatized me as a child, but it definitely spurred on a lot of what you see here taking place, these types of things that we're discussing, this reality of everything that we see happening around us, trying to really understand what is the paranormal, what is the supernatural, you know. And this is why whenever we do these types of episodes, I try to lay these things out so that it seems like if we were to ever show these types of things to other people, there's evidence to back up what we see taking place. You know, and for the people that are listening, we have a video going on in our video feed of the haunted morgue and slamming doors. And basically what it is a security guard slowly inching up at the bottom of a morgue up to a door where it is rhythmically beating. It is scary, let me tell you that. If we have time, I'll try to play that episode for you. But let's get back into this story for you guys. And this is, like I said, from Mr. John Mixer Marshall, because I myself have had encounters with some of these red-eyed demons, and I want to put this in here to say that you are not alone, my friend. I've also seen UFOs and have too many stories to tell. But for the sake of time, I'll share one of the Bigfoot encounters I had. This one took place in the Wind River Range in Wyoming. So if there's any people in Wyoming that are familiar with this area, let us know if you've also had encounters with Bigfoot. But he said he woke up out of a dead sleep. He doesn't know what time it was, but I could sense that something was outside of his tent, or outside of my tent. I remember looking up at the tent ceiling, and just above my head, my tent wall was the impression was so defined I was able to see it, that it had its fingers spread apart. I coughed, and it slowly started to pull back its hand and walked away. I could hear its heavy footfalls or steps. After that, the forest was extremely quiet for about an hour. So this is one thing that we don't really talk about so much on the show, Bigfoot. You know, I don't want to sound like, you know, we're too far out there, but this is something that we'll entertain. You know, everybody's got their encounter with Bigfoot or with whatever this entity is. But I would definitely be interested to hear what people think about this type of entity, Bigfoot, or whether or not he is whatever you think Bigfoot is. I definitely believe that he's real. There's the Sasquatch, the Yowie in Australia. There's all kinds of different cryptozoological creatures that are out there that are outside of our normal animal kingdom that we don't really even take into consideration. And this could be one of them. So him coming into contact with this upright humanoid, this Bigfoot-like character, why would he mention the fact that the forest was quiet afterwards? Could it be possibly what the Bigfoot was exuding? What kind of spiritual pressure Bigfoot was exuding? You see, he said he was able to wake up out of a dead sleep. People usually associate the smell and the time and the disorientation that it brings, but there's a lot of things that come with looking at Bigfoot, and I just thought that was interesting because he gave us a location, and I feel like people who were listening, maybe you've also heard these types of things. You see, but moving on into the stories, we have another one coming from Megan Ray, and it says plenty of stories, but the most memorable one was when I was living in this apartment with my mom. I was home alone and felt someone behind me, to the point to where I was certain that my mom came home. I started talking, acting like she was there, and got no response. So I called out to her and found out that she was still about an hour or so away, so would know this was no way her. I continued getting ready and turned my music back on and up again. Once I did that, again, the hair on the back of my neck started to stand up, and my spine started to feel like jello. I felt like that was a very interesting analogy. Your spine feeling like jello, the hair standing up on the back of your neck, that stillness in the air, the heightened sense of energy. She says, and just then my hand mirror, which was probably about 6 feet away from me, picks itself up and slams into the wall. I ran out of that place in my pajamas with no shoes on and drove to a friend's house. I think I would do the same thing, Megan Ray. You are not alone. You are not alone. Ooh. This is we have another story for you guys, and like I said, they were really good stories. There were so many too, and that's one of the things, guys, is we're only on volume 2. I have at least 4 volumes of notes of 4 volumes of at least 5 to 6, 7 pages of people's notes, comments, and emails and things that are going on. There are so many things going on. It is unbelievable. Unbelievable. And mind-blowing. That's another thing that I want to say. I'm very grateful that you guys would send in your stories and that we would be able to have this much information and talk about these types of things. Let's get back into this one. And this was an anonymous one that was sent in, and I thought that it was just the right amount of edgy. But it says that I was driving to San Diego from Arizona, talking to a friend on the road, when I saw 3 random lights appear in the sky. I told my friend, hold on, and I slowed down a little bit, and just then 2 more lights appeared on both sides of the original 3. It was almost in a boomerang shape. After those 2 showed up, the light started spinning and it zoomed towards me. It was so weird. I could tell that it was close, but somehow it was still far away. I really don't know how to explain it. The thing actually zoomed to a point in the desert to the right of me. I was so shocked, I put my car in park in the middle of the road and got out. It was probably a dumb idea, but at the time, who knows? I understand that entirely. Awestruck. He says that I told my friend, stay on the phone with me. I'm going to walk out into the desert a little. Because this was way too freaky not to investigate. I only took about 10 steps into the bushes and just felt way too weirded out. So I doubled back to my car and drove off. This was about 5 years ago, and I remember it like it was yesterday. Could you imagine that? Seeing something just fly off into your direction, but not into your direction, like come towards you, but like curve around you. And being on your phone, on the phone with your friend right there, just like, hey, you know, I'm gonna go check this out. Like, stay on the phone just in case I get abducted. You know, let them know this is what I was doing. Let them know I was out here chasing UFOs. But you know what's weird is that UFOs and aliens have been declassified in the U.S. Forest Service report. And this was put up by Mysterious Universe April 4th. It says that a Freedom of Information Act, a FOIA request by John Greenewald at the Black Vault, has turned a number of declassified U.S. Forest Service reports and communications which show that even in the Department of Agriculture has documented reports of UFO sightings and alleged alien bases on Earth. One of the documents detail an account given by an individual who called the Forest Service to report a secret alien-filled government base being constructed in the Tonto National Forest near Phoenix, Arizona. So maybe this is what you saw. It's strange how those types of things line up. Near Phoenix, Arizona. So if there's anybody in Phoenix who have seen the Phoenix Lights or are seeing any kind of strange things like that, let us know. One of the set of emails concerns eyewitness reports that flaming space junk from a UFO or satellite which crashed in the forest near Massanutten Mountain. That's a strange one. Massachusetts. Massanutten Mountain in the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia, and caused a forest fire. The Forest Service determined the cause was likely lightning. Another correspondence contains an eyewitness report of a UFO near Wyoming's Bighorn Mountains, and luckily contains pictures of an alleged UFO. Although their grainy condition makes them difficult to analyze, most likely the object is a flying insect which happened to be whizzing by when the photo was taken. Judge for yourself. The individual who took the photo did not notice the object until reviewing the pictures weeks after taking them. It's been a momentous couple of years for leaked and classified documents, thanks to both the Bond villain, or hero, or anti-hero, Julian Assange, and the Freedom of Information Act. Mystery hunters now have thousands of government communications and documents to pore over, many of which mention the existence of extraterrestrials, military sightings of UFOs, and even psychic phenomena, which we basically document on this show pretty heavily. While paranormal phenomena are mentioned many times in these documents, there is still, as usual, a lack of concrete evidence and an overabundance of hype surrounding them. Nevertheless, it is a step towards the right direction that the public is now aware that there is at least some level of recognition of these phenomena by government officials. Agreed. Agreed to the nth degree. And I wanted to share that with you guys because we'll be going over more UFO stories and things like that later on too, because, you know, this is important. Getting these things down, talking about these entities or this energy. And, you know, I'm very well aware of the military-industrial complex. I'm very well aware of the breakaway civilization, and even the alien agenda, the false rapture that they're trying to do, and things like that, of that nature. I'm very well aware of that as well. But I also believe, if you've listened to our episode with Billy Carson, that there is a breakaway civilization that has been here, an inner Earth civilization that has been here a lot longer than us, and we're just the modern iteration. So, you know, when you start talking about things like the Eisenhower-Greada Treaty, you know, I think it's in 1954, don't quote me, but basically what it is, in exchange for human bodies, they give us advanced technologies. These types of things are very real. So, you know, aliens and UFOs being documented by the Forest Service, yeah, you know, that's for sure. Amateur researchers such as myself who have grown up pouring through whatever kinds of information that come through, things like the Dulce base in New Mexico, and, you know, the hive that is underneath there, the 7 levels that they have, you know, living and working with actual extraterrestrials. You know, that's very real as well. And if anything, if I had the time, I would try to play for you guys the clip of Dr. Stephen Greer where he talks about some of these entities being PLFs, program life forms. And all of this that we're talking about, all of this basically comes from the UFO phenomena, the alien agenda. All these things are all encompassing. this all file into the paranormal aspect of things, the paranormal perspective, you see. But we're not here to talk. Well, I guess we are kind of here to talk about all these types of things. But let's move on to another story for the sake of time. If anything, we'll come back with another. We'll talk about another story and then come back with the video that I have lined up for you guys from my own investigation of what's going on here in my area that I'm doing. But this is a story from Earth's Landlord. It says, the first and last time I tried to open up my third eye by meditating. I wanted to put this up here because, you know, this story, it's a short but an intense ride. I'll tell you that much. And basically, I remember getting a comment from someone who said that they were afraid to open up their third eye. And, you know, whenever I read this, I felt like, you know, this is the opposite. This is basically what would happen if somebody was afraid and did these types of things, and what would go through. But you know, as I said, it is very short and intense. But let's continue on. It says, 2 years ago, something from out of my reality made its way into my room, waking me up just to get on top of me, like in a full mount position. I woke up swinging, sweaty, and it had a white, glowing skin with beautiful red eyes. That's what he said, beautiful red eyes. This all took place before I became a father. I've also had something take control and speak through a friend. It asked me to draw a heart, and once I drew it, he said I didn't look comfortable drawing it. And he then described to me where my dad was. It was weird because I hadn't talked to my dad in a while. He asked me if I'd like to talk to my father, and that my father needed to talk to me. So I finally spoke to my dad, and the day after doing so, I found out that I too was a father. To this day, I don't know who or what spoke to me through him. You see what I mean by it gets really intense really fast. Talking about literally entities coming out from his subconscious, or from his mind, the thought projection that we talk about as well, the tulpa, the energy that people are able to create, thought projections basically, this being pulled out from his reality, something he made up, and then engaged him. I don't want to say manipulated him, but try to, I don't want to say kill him, you know, something that tried to confront him. There was conflict, there was some kind of struggle. Obviously he was not ready, and then to find out later on in his life that something is trying to contact him between some other medium, between who knows what they were doing at the time. There was no actual mention of what was going on whenever they were communicating. There could have been some actual, you know, there could have been drugs, there could have been alcohol, because, you know, alcohol is an actual spirit, you know, and this is why it's called spirits. But there could have been other things in there that set the stage for this type of possession, this hosting, this change over, so to speak, you know. And understanding these types of things are very real, because, you know, I've had people that say, you know what, I'm just going to explain this in the way we're going to use connecting consciousnesses example of what alcohol is. I felt like that was a great way to explain what was going on with that. And if you guys haven't, definitely check out some of his work. I know people say sometimes that he uses fake facts or faulty information and things like that, but, you know, there's always going to be something wrong. People are always going to find something wrong with the information that you're putting out, and I'm not here to talk about that. What I am here to talk about is that he put together a really informative piece, I feel like, on alcohol, and why it should be something that you take into consideration. and why it's important. Well, not why it's important, but why it's looked at the way it is. You see, and why some people kind of have an aversion towards it, as well as some people literally not being able to hold their liquor, because that's something real as well. But it goes on like this. It says, have you ever wondered why they call alcohol spirits? Have you? It says the word alcohol is said to come from the Arabic term alcohol, which means body-eating spirit. In alchemy, alcohol is used to extract the soul essence of an entity. Hence, its use in extracting essence for essential oils. By consuming alcohol, it in effect lowers your body's natural vibrational frequency, which allows the body to be more susceptible to lower vibrational entities. Have you ever felt different, more sexual, more violent, less rational, and less logical after drinking alcohol? Are you aware we already live inside an ancient religious cult who are schooled concerning the dark powers of alcohol? It is this cult that popularizes alcohol through the media and government it controls to serve a very ancient and dark agenda. And I would have to agree, my friend. It definitely does. Because when you're looking at these types of things, I know this sounds silly, this sounds religious, this sounds like I'm bashing you and condemning you. But I'm definitely not. I'm trying to make you aware of what's going on. This is something that we talk about as well, putting power in objects, putting power on things, as I said before, with, well, as we just talked about, with the witches binding Trump. You see, them literally trying to cast a restraining ritual or a restraining spell on Trump, and they have attached orange card or something to it. They do it every waxing moon. I'm not sure, but they've got a whole system to how they're going about these types of things. But we are going to take a break, and when we do, we're going to come back talking about the case that I'm working on here locally and some of the other strange things that are going on in the world. But like I said, we're going to take a break, and we will be right back. Let you have the floor.
This is Carlos Gallegos. I am a caretaker, direct care staff, and I have been bringing my clients here for 3 months to functional aquatics. The issue that they're having, I have also heard myself with the door and voices. The first month I worked here, brought my client, I noticed the door sounded like someone was there trying to open it. Well, when I got up to look, there was nobody there and nobody in the parking lot. The next couple months as I was coming, I've noticed off and on different noises, voices, women's voices, talking, thinking that other care staff were here at the door. Went to look, no one was there.
Were these like full-blown conversations, or were they just like quiet
They
whispers?
were anywhere from 3 to 5 minute sounding conversations between two people.
And was this like in different locations?
Correct.
Or did it sound like in one centralized area?
I couldn't pinpoint it, but it came from what it sounded like the front door. And I was in the lobby and in the, what would you call this back here? Your
I'd say probably like the gymnasium.
The gymnasium.
Yeah.
Other than that, I've heard the clicking and the door making noises. I've heard the chime go off, but I don't know if you have a chime that goes off at the door.
I don't think we do.
But
well, I think that's what was replaced.
Yeah.
It's like when this whole recording right now started because we were coming down.
Correct.
I was right there at the foot of the stairs.
Correct.
You were in there.
Correct.
The doorbell went off.
Correct.
Somebody had to be within that distance between us, the bottom of the stairs, in there to press that.
Definitely, and I was in the gymnasium at the time. So.
Mm-hmm. And so what we're trying to talk about, because earlier this week, somebody came by and actually fixed and repaired this electrical outlet.
Okay.
Somebody actually changed it because they were having that many problems beforehand. So there's no reason that should still be happening. But
Correct.
The fact that had to have it changed,
There's something going on.
there's something going on.
Well, that's my testimony, and I just want to make that aware to you guys.
I know. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Much appreciated. Because whenever you have someone, as I said before, as you heard in the video that we recorded, this is one of those chance encounters, and this is at the actual location that I am actually trying to basically go and investigate. This is one of our local investigations that I have a amateur team that we're putting together here locally to look at, because there's a number of things going on in the world that I think require our attention. And so basically, as you heard in the conversation, me and Carlos were basically trying to explain the situation, explain the types of things that are going on, and looking at it in all kinds of different ways. And as I said before, I wanted to get his testimony down so that whenever I put together a compilation for you guys, because this is something that's basically been going on for multiple years, and I recently started this investigation probably since the start of this year, and this is something that I've documented heavily on the our exclusive feed. So if you haven't, definitely check out the exclusive feed. The standard membership that we have for it is $4.99 a month, basically 16 cents a day. You can get access to all the other stuff that we're doing, the archive seasons, the music, the early access to the episodes, even some of the mini casts that we put back up, and these extended broadcasts that we're doing, so much more. And you definitely help the podcast put it back into everything else that we're doing. So that's a little bit of a plug. Basically what I'm trying to say is, at this location that I'm at where we're conducting these types of investigations, I've been there for almost the start of the year, and now we're finding out a little bit more about the history. It dates back to the 1800s. It was in control of the city, or it was basically bought by the city towards the middle of the 1800s, 1850s. It wasn't developed until about the 1960s. Once we found out a little bit more about the actual area, we found out that it was a school, and that the actual area where this location is, where this building is, there's also a school, a church, and an accountant's a CPA office, as well as residential area. But basically it was a graveyard. It was a 7-acre closed off land that was basically used by the natives of the area. And what I intend to do next is get some more testimonies for you guys, more evidence, more documents, to where we basically try to figure out what happened there to leave this type of psychic residue, to leave these types of impressions in the land, basically. And and this is one of the things I talk about whenever I talk to people about these types of things, is I don't feel like I should be here. I don't feel like I should be talking about whatever is plaguing this area, whatever is inhabiting this area. But since it's only getting negative attention, it is feeding off of that. So the response that I'm getting simply by being there is, it sees me as a threat. And so what I'm basically trying to say, and if anything, I'll play for you guys the continuation of that conversation between me and Carlos, because while we were actually talking about these things and more, it was going off. The buzzer, the ringer, the button, whatever it uses to sign was definitely going off. But let me play this for you guys. And this is, like I said, the continuation of me and Carlos's conversation in regards to whatever is here at this local area, or this local haunting, or whatever this residual energy is. So me and Carlos were just having a great conversation. Correct. A great conversation about spirit science, new technologies, new sciences, new studies of everything, how the perception of the world is changing, and how we're changing with it. And as the conversation was reaching a heightened state,
the doorbell or the buzzer or whatever you call it,
it just went off.
Yeah.
And we're still sitting here in the same spot.
At the front door. Yep.
Dogs are right outside. We have not moved basically since the last time that we recorded, and literally it went off. So one of the things that I asked is, what is that? Carlos said that was, he could feel the static in the air. Could this have been
hit your stomach, yeah.
Right there in the stomach? Could that have been like a discharge from the conversation? Could that have been a manifestation? Could that have been what was that?
Maybe they're uncomfortable and they know that we know that we're talking about them. Who knows? Could be anything.
Could be anything.
But at least we know this is what's leading up, and this is what we're noticing. At least, this is what I'm noticing in the time that I've been here. So.
And it's only what? It is 9:34 on a Saturday.
Strange.
That early, and we're already dealing with that type of things, or those types of things. I actually showed Carlos a number of the other recordings and testimonies I have from other people. The things that are being documented there, and he started to tell me other things that he experienced, not only at the location, but he himself has noticed what would be considered the occult rising, or the spiritual intensity, the awakening, however you would like to describe it. He himself has been able to notice and witness what would be considered the spiritual energy, the source energy, whatever this energy is that we try to describe on this show so frequently. This God, energy, spirit, this unknown, you see, whatever this spirit power is. He's able to notice that it is rising, you see. And so whenever we were talking about all these types of things, even together, we kind of came to the general conclusion, well, is it that because we're trying to rid the area of this entity, because as he said before, he's heard disembodied voices, conversations, women's voices between 3 to 5 minutes long, in areas where he can't describe them. You see, you know what? There's so much more going on in this case, but to finish it out, basically, sorry to go on this tangent, with all these strange things that are going on, but definitely, if you guys haven't, please become a part of our Patreon exclusive where I talk more about these types of things. This episode is really about you, and unfortunately, not about me. I definitely kind of went off on a tangent, as I tend to do. But let me get back into your guys' stories, because basically, whenever we talk about these types of things, guys, it is that real, as you heard from so many other people. It is that real. But this story that I have for you guys, this is from Benny Thomas, and he says, last year, I used a Ouija board with 2 of my roommates. I'd always thought it was a complete nonsense before playing it, but the experience we had was really interesting. We made contact with an entity that claimed to have dwelled in our house for 20 years. And when we asked it to spell out my dog's name, it spelled it out perfectly. So what do you think that means? Is that a generational spirit? Is that something residual? Is this one of these spirits that has been there for multiple iterations, as I was trying to say before? I've only been able to be there for 4 or 5 months or so. Carlos himself has been able to be there for 3, and we're already able to notice this. But the stories go back as far back as 20 years for this individual. The other story that we have is from Opal Rain. She says that there were two beings in my room, and they injected something into my leg and left the room. Another incident I had with these same beings was them talking to me through telepathy, but I don't remember what they said. The latest encounter I had with these beings was during a storm, and the sky was lighting up, and you could see where the clouds were bending around the object in the sky. And suddenly, it started flashing with a bunch of colorful lights for nearly a minute. Another time, me and a friend saw a light coming down from the sky. It slowed down and landed behind a nearby mountain. We decided to investigate and followed the road leading back there, and it was government property. Of course. Something that's not UFO related, and I'm not entirely sure what this was, but a friend and I were on our way home from a road trip and then suddenly saw something white run across the street. But what's strange is while it was jumping, it changed shapes mid-air and flew away. That same night, we were further down the road, roughly 30 minutes away from home, and there was a flash of light that surrounded the car. I looked through the passenger side mirror, and there was a light. I tried to look and see where it was coming from, but by the time I did, it disappeared. So what do you think that is? A UFO? A shapeshifter of some kind of demon? Some kind of interdimensional force? Because a lot of the times whenever we look at these UFOs, or whatever these entities are, these fallen angels, these Nephilim, these UFOs, these multidimensional, interdimensional beings, a lot of the times we have to understand, and this, it talks about this even in the Bible. It says that even Satan is able to masquerade himself as an angel of light. What we see only as is projected onto us that we're able to decrypt with our eyes. That's only so much. That's only so much of a spectrum. You see. The next story we have is from Andrew Grinewald. He says, I've seen many UFOs. Most were pretty far away, but the first one I saw was very close and was a boomerang shape before. All metallic looking and made no noise. It could move at incredible speeds, making turns at 90 to 180 degrees without losing speeds. It didn't have to accelerate or decelerate either. It could just go from 0 to mind-blowingly fast. Just like that. It changed shape into a metallic sphere and cloaked itself for a short time while hovering. And when it left, it turned very bright, like a metallic white light, and was as far as the eye could see in 2 seconds. There was 4 witnesses to this. We were on top of a mountain, so we could see pretty far. After it left, I remember all of us started talking about what just happened. And just then, while we were talking about it, 5 fighter planes flew overhead from the direction of D.C. This sighting was in VA, Virginia. Now these next few stories I have for you guys, they're going to be a little... These stories actually, ironically enough, were sent in after appearing on another show. And I felt like it's fair to show the proper attribution, give proper credit. We'll call her Miss Jane Maytum. How about that? And her stories go like this. She says, I will start with this story. What happened to me? I was about 7 or 8. I lived in a small town in the western Pennsylvania area with my parents and older brother. We lived in a large ranch house on top of a hill. The bedrooms were on one end of the house, and an add-on sunroom was at the other where we watched TV. My brother and I were in our bedrooms, and my parents were watching a sitcom on TV. This would have had to have been in the late 60s. So we've already gone far back as 1990s, and we're going as far back as the 60s with these amazing stories. I was almost, not quite, asleep when I heard a very, very evil laugh in the distance. This laugh was like nothing I had heard before. It was monstrous and horrible. Immediately I felt fear and strained my ears to determine where this laugh came from. I listened to the sounds of the TV in the room, but the studio laughter did not match what I heard. Meanwhile, whoever was laughing sounded as if they were slowly walking from some distance towards me. I was paralyzed by fear, and in my terror I began to cry out, to God. At 7 or 8, she's crying out to God in my head, not aloud, calling him Father. And it's important to note, and this is what she writes, it's important to note that I had not been raised in church or with much in the way of a religion. I had heard of God, but always thought of him as just God, not Father. The laughter and the sense of evil continued to draw closer to, and my cries came faster and faster. Father, Father, Father. In a truly horrific moment, I realized that whoever was laughing was no longer a distance away, but had somehow passed into my mind. It was almost ready to take me out. I screamed, not aloud, but in my head, with all I could muster, one last Father. And instantly, the sense of evil and laughter was gone, and I felt a wave of love and peace. I knew I'd been rescued from something terrible, otherworldly, and from that point on, I praised God for hearing me and saving me. This event spurred me to find a relationship with God, even though no one else in my family seemed so inclined. Decades later, I mentioned to my mother that there was something in that house, and she quickly agreed, but she didn't discuss it beyond that point. Now, Miss Jane Maytum, thank you very much, because that was a very scary one. This is another person. She says she has a lot of stories. This is another person that we might have to have on the show to talk about all of her experiences. As I said before, you guys yourselves, you're more than welcome to send us voicemails and emails and in depth about the stories that you have, because I understand when talking about these types of things, it sounds strange and crazy. But what's more crazy is realizing the fact that we have people like Katy Perry, Lady Gaga, Lana Del Rey, and whoever else practicing witchcraft, and then infecting the next generation. But speaking of witchcraft, this next story that Miss Jane Maytum sent to us deals with just that. And she says, this is another story, but this one happened to a close friend. She and her sisters were raised by their father and stepmother, both of whom worshipped Satan. They were forbidden to speak the name of Jesus or God, and she only learned about Jesus from her oldest sister, whispering stories about him to her as they shared a bed at night. She was a little girl of about 6 when she went to stay a week with relatives, many states away. Her older sisters had cousins the same age, but my friend had one her age, and within a couple days she felt horribly homesick. She so much wanted to be home with her own toys to play with. She became very sad and went to bed in tears. She prayed as she cried that God would let her go home. Shortly after, she fell asleep, and in her dream she found herself back in her room at home. She clearly saw the room, and she felt like she was there. Immediately, she ran to the closet and pulled out her favorite toys, her Barbie toys, and sat on the floor and began playing. At one point, she felt like someone was standing in the hallway, peering through the open door at her. She tried to pull it back into the dark hallway, but couldn't make out anything. The next day, she woke up feeling much better, and called her parents, excited to tell them that she felt like she had been home and played with her toys. Her parents seemed very surprised by what she said. They said that they had been in the living room that night when they heard laughter coming from her room. They climbed the stairs and saw a light streaming into the hall from the room. When they came to the doorway, they could see her inside the room, playing with her toys. But something seemed to keep them from entering the room. They could only stand and watch. Then the vision ended. And then this Miss Jane Maytum notes that I'm not sure what to make of this, nor is she. But given that Satanism is going on, I think God answered her prayer and also used it as a way to send a warning message to her parents. Now, what do you make of that? That is a story on both ends. The girl feels as though she's transferred there, as if she actually goes there, as if she has her thought is projected to the area. Her body is there. But then the parents correlate the story by saying that they hear the daughter, they hear laughter in the room. That's strange. That is strange. What do you make of that? These are stories that go all the way back to the 60s, as we said before. What could you make of that? Talking about these types of things. Satanism. Curanderas, people practicing witchcraft, doing all kinds of weird rituals. What can you make of that? And this has gone on in our past, brought forward into our present. So when we're talking about all these other things that are going on, is it really that strange? Is it really that paranormal? Are more of these types of things happening? Is there any real way to discuss and define what we see going on? Who knows? However, that's all I really have for you guys. I know there was a lot that I kind of threw out there between me trying to explain my own investigations and reading your guys' stories. I hope I didn't say too much. Hope I didn't creep you out too much. There's a lot of things going on in the world, and one of the things we like to discuss on the show is the spiritual implications of ignoring these types of things. People try to say that this is paranormal. This is strange. These are things that are going on in our surrounding, and we shouldn't look at them. Well, I'm here to tell you that more of these things are going on. More encounters are happening. From people having mirrors thrown 6 feet across the room, to people living with their grandmothers that practice witchcraft, to people literally waking up to red-eyed, beautiful white creatures strangling them after meditating. Who's to say? Who is to say? But I have a lot of things planned for you guys in the future, and I would like to say thank you for allowing me and allowing us to do these types of episodes. This is really something I do look forward to, is talking about these types of things, trying to understand what is actually going on beyond the veil. And if you haven't, please check out Lori Alexander's channel, 3 Minutes to Midnight, where I was a guest on the show after a number of technical difficulties. It's always with the technical difficulties. They don't want us to communicate, and this is why we have to diversify the information, because you guys deserve it. These stories deserve to get out there. But I'm done ranting to you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I have it in the description bar below. Or you're more than welcome to send us a voicemail on 843-900-6296. We'll play it on the show, or we'll discuss it in a video. There's a number of things that we can do. Always make sure you guys are checking out our Patreon exclusive, where you can get access to, as I said before, the archive season, the early access to the episodes that you're listening to right now, and some of the compilations that I put together from these investigations, and so much more. If you don't want to do that, make sure you're paying attention to our website, factionsoffreedom.jimdo.com, because we are always putting in new things, and I would hope that you guys check it out. As I said before, we diversify the information because you guys deserve it. But I'm done ranting. This is Noise Era, Freedom Faction, out.